Welcome to Weather HQ. I'm Paolo del Rosario. This week, we explored a variety of important topics, ranging from the booming cacao farming industry, how structures are shielded from earthquakes, and the unforgiving heat that is turning up the risk of fires. To kick things off, here's my interview with Fiorella Lala Rafael Oradnik, the owner of Crave Cacao Orchard, who generously shared her experiences in building and growing her cacao business.
So, nag-venture ako sa professional career being IT. When I came back kasi dito sa Bicol, by the way, I'm here in Camarines Sur, Bicol right now. I grew up here, and kahit nung bata pa ako, talagang marami na ditong cacao and tablea. But when I moved out, nag-aral, nagtrabaho, I came back, and sadly, wala na akong nabibiling tablea. Talagang nagkikrave ako lagi, lalo na pag Christmas tradition na namin yun, na umiinom ng tablea, amoy tsokolate sa loob ng bahay. But recently, wala nang nagtatanim, wala nang nagpa-process, wala nang mabili. So that inspired me na ano kaya mag-start ako ng farming, mag-move ako into being a farmer, magtanim ako ng cacao, and I produce cacao beans na gagawin ko mismo ng mga tsokolate. And ganun nga yung ginawa ko. And not just the traditional tablea, ni-level up ko naman, we use local ingredients, lalo na yung pili, kasi maraming pili dito sa amin sa Bicol. I incorporated it with my chocolates. Pati sili, kasi alam naman natin ng mga Bicolano mahilig sa maaanghang.
Opo.
In-improve ko at inaral ko yung mga paggawa ng tsokolate, at eto na kami ngayon dito sa Crave Cacao.
Grabe. If I'm not mistaken, ma'am, 4 hectares, 2,500 cacao trees sa Crave. Paano ka po nagsimula? Ano po ang background ninyo? Do you actually have an agricultural background po? Because if I'm not mistaken, IT po yung sinabi nyo kanina, if your previous career.
Ay, oo. Actually, wala akong hands-on experience sa farming. Growing up, although may mga land area naman kami, my family has been really into farming, like rice farming or sa coconut farming. Pero ako, physically, wala akong hands-on experience. So, ginawa ko, nag-aral talaga ako. I researched hours and hours of research, training sa mga marurunong na. I attended government-sponsored trainings or kahit mga private trainings para mabuo talaga yung knowledge ko about farming in general and specifically about cacao farming. Kasi mahirap mag-venture into something na wala kang alam, We spend time, effort, money, lalo na sa pag-start ng isang business. Agriculture is also a kind of business. So we have to treat it as such. We need to plan, we need to study. And kahit na in-execute na natin, we go through a lot of mistakes then, so we learn from it, and then we improve. So ganun yung ginawa ko dito sa Crave Cacao.
Well, Crave Cacao, it feels very experiential po yung vibe, yung interaction with the potential customers po ninyo. Can you tell us a bit more about yung concept po ninyo sa Crave? It's not just a farm. It's somewhere you can actually enjoy and learn about yung proseso and actually taste it literal farm to table.
Oo, talagang gusto ko kasi hands-on experience. Ako, mas natututo ako when I do hands-on compared sa yung nakaupo ka, tapos nakikinig ka, na nanonood ka ng mga presentations sa screen, nakaupo ka sa air-conditioned room. For me, farming should be hands-on talaga. Well, you still have that classroom training, kumbaga. But what's more important is when you actually do it yourself. Sabi ko nga sa mga trainees, dapat hindi kayo aalis dito sa farm na hindi kayo pinagpapawisan, hindi kayo maputik, hindi madumi yung kamay mo. That's the proof na talagang natuto kayo. Kasi when I tell them, when you go back to your farms, dapat marunong na kayo. Iba po kasi yung knowledge mo lang na narinig mo or nakita mo sa screen. And then when you do it on your own sa farm nyo, minsan hindi na marunong or hindi na alam kung anong gagawin. So I make sure na when the students or the farmers that I teach in our farm, aalis sila, na marunong na sila.
Ma'am Lala, we're looking at some of the footage you sent in, and I am hungrier than I should be at the moment. But when you take a look at the quality of the chocolates produced by Crave, syempre, I'm sure you're your own harshest critic. How would you describe yung level of chocolates that we have here in the Philippines, particularly yung mga kuha natin sa Crave?
Yes. Well, for the Philippines, the cacao beans is truly a fine flavor. Alam mo, ang cacao gets its flavor from many factors. Isa na dun yung terroir or the climate and the soil that we have here in the Philippines. Ang ibang lasa ng mga cacao in other places in the world are iba-iba. So tayo dito sa Pilipinas, may unique flavor tayo. Here in my farm in Camarines Sur, ang flavor profile namin is on the fruity floral notes. So pag mga ma-experience na mga taster, yung mga tao na magaling maglasa ng mga flavors, they can actually taste that. We produce limited ingredient chocolates kasi we make craft chocolate. When we say that, yan talaga yung maingat na ginawa, and by hand, by an artisan, by a craft maker. So once we harvest the cacao beans, it goes through post-harvest processing, andyan yung fermentation and drying. And only after that, the dried cacao beans can now be processed into chocolate. Ngayon, marami na namang stages na pinagdadaanan yan, and each step requires a true skill of an artisan. So dadaan yan sa roasting, sa grinding, and then it goes through refining. We refine our chocolate for at least 24 to 48 hours. Minsan, umaabot pa yan ng 72 hours hanggang sa ma-achieve namin yung proper fineness. Yung once na kinain ng chocolate, magme-melt sa mouth mo at wala kang mararamdaman na mga parang buha-buhangin. And then it also develops the flavor through the conching process. And then after we finish the processing kanyan, saka na namin yan tina-temper and mold yung mga iba-iba ng mga molds with the designs na makikita natin, parang chocolate bars or chocolate candies. So we enjoy actually making these, and we are very proud na nakakagawa tayo niyan dito sa Pilipinas. Alam mo, through the years, dekada na, lagi kong naririnig, pasalubong, imported chocolate. Sanay na sanay tayong Pilipino on patronizing and eating imported chocolates. But now, Filipinos, ang dami ng mga chocolate makers using Philippine cacao beans who can actually process craft chocolate na at par sa mga imported chocolates. And may I say, even better, kasi it's our own cacao beans. It's very fresh because we've harvested it from our farms, and we use only very minimal ingredients. We don't add artificial flavors. We don't add preservatives. We don't add any oils. Other chocolate makers would add oils to dilute it. Kami talagang yung pure cacao beans only, which has the cacao butter. So yun ang nagpapasarap sa ating Philippine craft chocolate.
Grabe. Ms. Lala, sorry, I have to cut you off there because, again, nagugutom na ako. But at the same time, we're also running out of time. But before I let you go po, because I want to talk about yung business aspect of Crave and, of course, the Philippine chocolate industry. We had a chocolatier here recently na sinabi niya po na kulang yung production ng cacao to meet the demand here dito sa Philippine market. Sa palagay niyo ba, that is the space that you can take advantage of considering po that yung quality ng Philippine cacao, not just from Kamsur, but also from the Davao region in particular, are actually of a certain quality. And of course, would you encourage mga prospective business owners or prospective agriculturists to explore yung space ng cacao production?
Yes, we have very, very low supply of cacao beans at napakataas ng demand, not just locally, but internationally as well. Philippines is a net importer. We only produce 1/4 of what we consume, kaya import tayo ng cacao products. So this is a very good problem, actually, an opportunity for farmers, landowners, or those who want to venture into agriculture to start cacao farming. Kasi yung market andyan na eh. The worldwide population keeps increasing and people all over the world loves chocolate. Kaya yung market for cacao will never end. Pataas lang ng pataas. So I am inviting farmers like me, mga farm owners, to start cacao, to plant cacao. Anyways, in 2 years alone, magsa-start na siyang mag-produce and it can give you fruit unlimited all year round. And through latest technology, forever, may natawag na may forever sa cacao na hindi mo kailangan magtanim na magtanim. You can just do grafting and you will keep producing fruit in even 100 years. So possible siya and magandang business opportunity, added income from our farmers.
When we return, we'll explore how buildings are protected from earthquakes. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more insightful discussions after the break. Hello, you're still watching Weather HQ. I'm Paolo del Rosario. The deadly 7.7 magnitude earthquake in Myanmar, which claimed 3,700 lives, has sparked discussion about our own susceptibility in Metro Manila in the event that the big one strikes. To find out how secure buildings are in Metro Manila from a severe earthquake, here's an interview with Engineer Rodolfo Mendoza Jr., the Vice President of the Association of Structural Engineers of the Philippines.
The National Structural Code is actually part of our National Building Code, and it was actually crafted following mostly U.S. standards and codes in the U.S. In particular, when we talk about earthquake loads, the National Structural Code of the Philippines is mainly based on the U.
All right, so it looks like Sir Max Zoom has hung a bit, so we're going to try and get him back in just a bit. But of course, we're talking about this because of the recent earthquakes that happened in Myanmar and Thailand. We've actually had conversations about this, also segments in Weather HQ talking about the disaster resilience. And Sir Max, sorry, it looks like you're back. You got cut off a bit. I believe you were telling us more about the details when it comes to the NSCP, especially where you got your standards from, and of course, how we're trying to upgrade or update yung mga standards po natin dito sa Pilipinas.
Yes, sir. So as I mentioned, no, the National Structural Code of the Philippines is mainly based on the U.S. standards. Specifically for earthquake, it is based on the Uniform Building Code 1997. No? The Uniform Building Code may not be the latest code in terms of earthquake, but we are using it because we are limited in terms of the seismic maps that are available in our country right now. Our maps are still based on zones, but recently, through the collaboration of ASEP, our organization, and PBOX, we were able to produce the new seismic map for the Philippines under the project SHIELD of PBOX.
Now, engineer, in layman's terms, what makes a building or a house safe and earthquake resistant?
There are ingredients, I would say, if I will use that analogy, for making a structure safe. Of course, we start with a good design, and a good design is following our National Structural Code of the Philippines. Now, it doesn't end there. We need to use the right materials for our structure, and we need to engage a competent and reliable contractor to ensure that the plans are constructed accordingly. No? So these are the three, I would say, components that would make a structure structurally sound.
Sir, you mentioned the making sure that the structures are sound, but then let's be practical here. There are going to be people who move into buildings, houses, units that are not aware of how a building was constructed, how a house was constructed, and whether or not it is up to code when it comes to being able to actually go through earthquakes and still stay standing. At the same time, PBOX did release an application recently that allows people to check the hazards in and around their system with the Hazard Hunter PH, so you have more updates when it comes to what the natural disaster areas are around any particular address or building. Now, let's say you're someone who is just curious about the status of their house, their office building. How can they be prepared for the big one? And what information do they need to be able to be prepared?
Yeah. I think the app of box, which is the hazard hunter, is a very important app in order to quantify the hazard that we have in terms of our location. But the way we measure risk is always a product of hazard and vulnerability. So once we determine the hazard, which is really depending on our location, how close are we to the nearest active fault, that is one measure or one component of measuring risk. But the another component is the vulnerability. And vulnerability talks about the strength of our structure. Now, one way to assess is we need to engage a structural engineer to evaluate if the building is structurally sound or not. Now, if of course we just move into a building, one way to check is normally if a building was designed in based on codes like 2010 and NSCP 2010 and above, I think in most cases those buildings were designed with sufficient level or factor of safety against earthquake.
Engineer, I have a question. Or what goes on in the process of assessing structural integrity of buildings, and who are subject to these assessments, and what will happen if they fail?
Mm-hmm. So the structural assessment of the building is a process wherein we want to determine the structural deficiency in a structure. No? So we have a tier approach wherein we classify, we first check the condition of the structure, and we identify what we call structural deficiencies. And these structural deficiencies are textbook failures of buildings that we observed, I think, in the Thailand earthquake, Myanmar earthquake. Those observed damages were also consistent with this identified deficiencies, which are commonly the causes of failures in this type of structures, so such as sub-story, weak story failure. No? So now, once you identify those kinds of deficiencies, the next step is to address those deficiencies through retrofitting. No? There are several retrofitting measures. There are no universal measures to solve everything, but we start with global measures by ensuring that the structure would be limited in terms of the deformation and limiting the damage on main structural framing system.
Now, engineer, what are the biggest vulnerabilities that you see in the older buildings or homes here in Manila?
In most cases, this is the insufficient seismic detailing. No? That's because they were designed on older codes wherein the seismic detailing is not yet fully established. No? And other deficiencies are what we call a soft story. That's a common type of structure in the Philippines where we have open parking, very, very soft story in comparison to the upper floors. So these are textbook structural deficiencies that are the main causes of collapse of buildings during earthquakes.
Well, you talked about a while ago, FIVOX and DOST, and the partnership that you do have with them. You also have a project called, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, the Seismic Hazard Assessment for Design Earthquake of the Philippines, or SHADE. Could you shed more light on the SHADE for us?
Yes, I think the Project SHADE is an initiative by FIVOX, and it's a collaboration between FIVOX and our organization. And as I mentioned kanina, I told you that our current standard in the Philippines is based on the Uniform Building Code. Now, the reason we cannot proceed with improving our code is because our maps were not updated. We are still using zone maps. Now, through this project, SHADE of PBOX and ASAP, we can now update our code based on what we call maximum considered earthquakes. No? And what it does is it provides you a methodology to assess the building on different return periods. No? So we have a service level earthquake wherein we assess an earthquake for very not very weak earthquakes like 4 and 5 magnitude. And then we have also a methodology to assess the earthquake under DBE. These are the 6 to 7 magnitude earthquake and under very strong earthquake. So what it does is it allows us to assess our structure depending on the level of performance that we want. No? So this is, I think, one of the transformative evolution of our code in the Philippines. And our organization aims to publish the new National Structural Code of the Philippines following these new seismic maps this year.
Up next, Fire Prevention Month might be over, but the unforgiving heat is turning up the risk of fires. Welcome back. I'm Paolo del Rosario. This is Weather HQ. Fire Prevention Month may be over, but the intense heat these days is raising the risk of fires. Now, how do we stay safe and prepared for this? Here's an interview with Fire Senior Inspector Captain Leslie Ann Ramos, Station 4 Commander of the Manila Fire District.
Sa panahon po kasi ng tag-init, mas mataas po yung panganib ng mga sunog dahil po sa mga tuyong halaman, mga mababang humid, especially dahil na rin po sa mataas na temperature. Unang-una po sa mga fire safety tips na ibibigay ko po sa inyo is yung panatilihin po nating malinis ang ating kapaligiran or maintain cleanliness. Alisin po natin yung mga tuyong dahon, mga halaman na nakakalat lang po sa natin, sa mga bakuran natin, sa kapaligiran. Kasi po, once po na nabigyan po yan ng spark or ng apoy, madali po itong magliyab. And wag din po tayong magtapon ng mga posporo, mga sigarilyo, o mga basurang madali pong mag-apoy sa mga lugar na may mga tuyong damo at mga dahon. I-ano din po natin, isaalang-alang din po natin yung mga tamang pagtatapon po ng basura or yung proper disposal of waste. Tiyakin po natin na ang mga posporo o mga upos po ng sigarilyo ay mga patay na po bago po natin ito itapon sa mga basurahan. Gamitin din po natin ang mga tamang basurahan at huwag din po tayo magtapon ng mga flammable liquids or mga materials katulad po ng mga lata ng spray, mga gasolina, mga pintura, ganyan po. Then, i-maintain din po natin yung pagkakaroon po natin ng mga fire extinguisher which is considered as the first aid firefighting equipment po natin. Magkaroon po tayo ng mga fire extinguisher sa ating mga bahay. At siguraduhin po natin na gumagana po ito at syempre dapat po alam po natin siyang i-operate. Then, next po is yung pag-iingat po sa mga electrical appliances. Iwasan po natin yung sobrang paggamit po ng electrical appliances. Lalo na po, mainit po ang panahon. Hindi po natin alam, sobra na po yung paggamit natin ng electric fan, mga aircon, di natin alam, nag-overheat. Kaya nagiging dahilan po ng malalaking sunog po sa ating mga lugar. Siguraduhin din po natin na hindi po sira yung mga electrical wirings natin sa bahay o yung mga connection po natin sa bahay. Kung may mga sirang electrical wirings po, ay ipagawa na po natin ito agad sa mga eksperto. Then, yung regular po na inspection natin sa mga gasoline or mga gas stoves, mga gas tanks po natin. Baka mamaya yung mga connections po natin sa mga LPG, yung mga LPG hose, baka mamaya sira na yan, pilit pa po natin ginagamit. Ay, wag pong ganon kasi it may cause disaster or sunog po sa ating mga lugar. Then magkaroon din po tayo ng mga fire safety plans, maghanda po tayo ng mga evacuation plans, mag-ingat po tayo sa mga open flames, mga kandila. Karamihan po kasi ngayon sa mga lugar ay nagkakaroon po tayo ng mga brownout. Minsan umaabot po hanggang gabi, hanggang madaling araw. Minsan gumagamit po tayo ng mga kandila. Huwag po nating iwanan na nakasindi ito kapag po tayo ay matutulog at huwag din po natin siyang ilalagay sa mga lugar po na may mga light materials o yung mga bagay na madali pong masunog. Then, lagi po tayong sumunod sa mga fire safety regulations, sa mga local fire safety guidelines, sa mga batas po. I think meron po tayong bagong batas ngayon which is Republic Act 9003 or the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act of 2000. Ngayon, pinoprohibit na po tayo na magsunog ng mga palayan po. Di ba po karamihan sa mga probinsya ay sinusunog po yung mga farm para po tamnan sa susunod. So, iwasan na po natin gawin yun kasi maaari pong kumalat sa mga residential area. So, yun po, ma'am. Huwag na po natin ginawa.
Grabe, Captain. Napaka-detailed po ng list ninyo. Actually, gusto ko nga ilista eh. Pero, just talking about yung... just to make sure, wala ka naman na-miss po, no? Kompleto
Wala
po yun.
naman po.
Of course, syempre, tapos na po yung Fire Prevention Month. But then, may mga campaign pa ba ang BFP when it comes to fire prevention na mas constant po na pwedeng sundan ng mga tao?
Actually, meron pa rin po tayong mga kinakandak na mga fire safety education sa communities. Mga fire safety talks, mga seminars. Patuloy po yung ating mga local fire stations na nag-organize po ng mga seminars and workshops para po sa ating mga barangay, sa ating mga eskwelahan, sa ating mga different establishments po. Patuloy din po yung mga information campaigns through social media. Dahil lahat naman po ngayon ay gumagamit ng cellphone, so ginamit na rin po ni BFP na platform ang social media for online awareness. Ginagamitan po natin ito ng mga infographics, mga videos, and collaboration with other influencers din po. Nagbibigay din po tayo ng mga educational materials like mga flyers, mga posters, mga fire safety kits po ay pinamamahagi din po natin. Then, tinutulungan din po natin yung mga fire safety communities or yung mga brigades po natin para maging mas maalam po sila with regards to fire safety.
And that's a wrap for this week's Weather HQ. Don't miss us next week, right here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel. I'm Paolo del Rosario. Have a great weekend.